Exodus chapter 5. Should be an insert in your bulletin you can follow along with. Some fill in the blank stuff. Exodus 5. I want to read the whole text to us. It starts in chapter 5, verse 1, and we'll read all the way down to chapter 6, verse 8. I'll probably wait for chapter 6 until later in the message, so I want to just read the story of chapter 5. It's not unfamiliar territory, but nonetheless, let's read it and then we'll begin. Afterward, Moses and Aaron went and said to Pharaoh, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness." But Pharaoh said, "Who is the Lord that I should obey his voice and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and moreover, I will not let Israel go." Then they said, "The God of the Hebrews has met with us. Please let us go a 3 days journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God, lest he fall upon us with pestilence and with the sword." The king of Egypt said to them, "Moses and Aaron, why do you take the people away from their work? Get back to your burdens." And Pharaoh said, "Behold, the people of the land are now many, and you make them rest in their burdens." The same day Pharaoh commanded the taskmasters of the people and their foremen, "You shall no longer give the people straw to make bricks as in the past. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. But the number of the bricks that they made in the past you shall impose on them. You shall by no means reduce it, for they are idle. Therefore they cry, 'Let us go and offer sacrifice to our God. Let heavier work be laid on the men, that they may labor at it and pay no regard to lying words.' So the taskmasters and the foremen of the people went out and said to the people, 'Thus says Pharaoh, I will not give you straw. Go and get your straw yourselves wherever you can find it, but your work will not be reduced in the least.' So the people were scattered throughout all the land of Egypt to gather stubble for straw. The taskmasters were urgent, saying, 'Complete your work, your daily task each day, as when there was straw.' And the foremen of the people of Israel, whom Pharaoh's taskmasters had set over them, were beaten and were asked, 'Why have you not done all your task of making bricks today and yesterday, as in the past?' Then the foreman of the people of Israel came and cried to Pharaoh, 'Why do you treat your servants like this? No straw is given to your servants, yet they say to us, "Make bricks." And behold, your servants are beaten, but the fault is in your own people.' But he said, 'You are idle, you are idle. That is why you say, "Let us go and sacrifice to the Lord." Go now and work. No straw will be given you, but you must still deliver the same number of bricks.' The foreman of the people of Israel saw that they were in trouble when they said, 'You shall by no means reduce your number of bricks, your daily task each day.' They met Moses and Aaron, who were waiting for them, as they came out from Pharaoh, and they said to them, 'The Lord look on you and judge, because you have made us stink in the sight of Pharaoh and his servants, and have put a sword in their hand to kill us.' Then Moses turned to the Lord and said, 'O Lord, why have you done evil to this people? Why did you ever send me? For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to his people, and you have not delivered your people at all.'" The last thing in chapter 4, when you look over there, the last verse in chapter 4, it says, the people of Israel believed, and when they heard that the Lord had visited the people of Israel, and that he had seen their affliction, they bowed their heads in worship. So the last thing in chapter 4 is that everyone's like, "Oh, this is great news. God's going to take care of us." And then chapter 5 plays itself out. It's like, "What? This is crazy. Things are considerably worse." Does that ever happen to you? Does that ever happen to us? It does. This chapter begins the formal Exodus story and runs through chapter 15, verse 21. So it runs for 10 chapters. In it, there are three basic characters. Pharaoh, Moses, and God. God has all the authority. Pharaoh believes he has authority. And Moses gets wedged between those two guys from time to time, thinking, man, I don't like this spot. You ever find yourself in that position? Yeah, you do. The Hebrew text in chapter 5, verse 1 through chapter 6, verse 8 is pretty straightforward, emphasizing the theme of authority. Pharaoh's words to Moses are the central authority statement in the text. Who is the Lord? And he actually uses the word Yahweh. Who is this Yahweh character you're talking about? Pharaoh says. That I should obey his voice and let Israel go. I do not know Yahweh, he says, and moreover, I will not let Israel go. Now, that may sound just kind of passive, but it's not. It's extremely aggressive in the text. He is actually making a statement, I don't care who this person is, I'm not doing what you want. He's pretty arrogant about the whole thing. I want to divide the text into two pieces, chapter 5, verse 1 through chapter 6, verse 1. Let's look at chapter 6, verse 1. But the Lord said to Moses, and this all transpires, the Lord says to Moses, now you shall see what I will do to Pharaoh. Moses has said to God, what are you doing? Why did you pick me? Get me out of this role. I don't like this role. God says to Pharaoh, to Moses, now you shall see what I will do to Pharaoh, for with a strong hand he will send them out, and with a strong hand he will drive them out of his land. He doesn't address Moses' comments to God. Why did you pick me? I don't like this job. Get me out of here. He just tells him what he's going to do. We'll come back to that. I consider that whole section right there of Moses being challenged. And then chapter 6, verses 2 through 8 is a restatement of God's authority. We'll come to that last. But let me give you some background first. If you went to the President of the United States and proposed a national holiday where people get off work, what would he tell you? Get out of my office. Who are you? Get the business in here. Well, in some sense, that's what's going on right here. We want a national holiday. Well, what are national holidays like? What were national holidays like in Egypt? Ancient Egypt was full of religious holidays, and when they took place, everybody was off work. These religious holidays were public holidays for everyone. Ramesses II lists 46 public holidays in his records. 46! I think we presently have 13. There were 3 seasons in the Egyptian calendar, and each had associated holy days, and many of the Egyptian gods had special days for them as well, and people would just take off work. So I'm thinking, when did anybody actually work? If you're off for 46 holidays to start with, on one guy's list, plus all the special minor deities and their holy days. Some were national spectacles, and at times the gods were brought out of their temples and sailed down the Nile River, and throngs of people would crowd along the Nile River just to see all this stuff. So what Moses is asking Pharaoh is not a unique thing. Maybe he's thinking, I think I'm already maxed out. I don't know. Egyptians understood the importance and the necessity of getting off work for religious holidays, so Moses' request would not have been odd to Pharaoh, which enhances his rebellion against the whole request. In the ancient world, such festivals were celebratory, some were solemn, but everybody respected everybody else in the midst of a public national festival or religious holiday. Everyone did. The notion that the deity being recognized would be vengeful, or as Moses puts it, lest he fall upon us with a sword or pestilence, was a pretty common thing. We do all these things so that we don't have gods battling with us. This is how the Egyptians thought. There's plenty of cultures that think that way today. I doubt very much that anybody thinks like that in America. Pharaoh's response is caustic and harsh. Who is Yahweh that I should obey his voice and let Israel go? It was an outright challenge to God's authority. Simple as all that. So let's start in our text. Moses challenged. When we obey God, we can expect that everything will go well. That's just not true. When I obey God, does everything go well? No. It may go well for a little brief period of time. It may just go haywire seconds later. In the events of chapter 5, Moses obeys God. Pharaoh pushes back, says no. Then he makes things worse for the Israelites, and the people complain to their overseers, and they to the taskmasters. There's a chain of command or chain of authority in the story that's really interesting to kind of process through too. There's Pharaoh, there's the taskmasters, those are the guys with the whips, who answer directly to Pharaoh, and then there's overseers, and most of the overseers in our story were probably Hebrews. They picked them out. You're a natural leader, you're in charge of these people right here. Make sure they get their work done. Now the word taskmaster in the text means the person who oppresses. Their job is to make sure that things got done. And the word overseer is the word recorder, or someone who takes notes. They write down what got done. They make sure that stuff gets done, and they report back to the taskmaster. So the overseers had no real authority to punish people for not working hard, or not bringing in straw, or making bricks. So there's a chain of authority right here, because the taskmasters never actually get punished for anything. Who gets punished? The overseers. They actually get whipped by the taskmasters. And one commentator says, it would not be feasible to beat all the teeming thousands of Hebrew slaves, so when they failed to produce their daily quota, the Israelite overseers are made personally responsible and are beaten by the Egyptian slave drivers because they're in a position in the middle of authority. So the taskmasters have whips, and the overseers have tablets to write things down. That's what's going on in our text. What did the overseers do? We're not going to appeal to the guy with the whip. We're going to appeal directly to Pharaoh. So they jumped the chain of command, which is what we sometimes do, and they said to Pharaoh, this is outrageous. You can't do this to us. And what is Pharaoh's response? I'm not changing the rules for anybody. Get out of my presence. He runs them off. And when they come out of that particular meeting, it says they were screaming for mercy. It says in the text, they cried out. It literally means they were screaming for mercy. They probably came in there on their knees going, you can't do this to us. Get us out of this mess. Of course, they got beat up by people with whips. So they're pretty unhappy, very unhappy. With authority at any level comes responsibility for what must happen. That includes being punished when things fail to happen. Pharaoh did not care that the overseers were not the ones making bricks. He didn't care that the overseers did not understand that he saw the Hebrews as idlers. All he wanted was the final product, and he was not getting it. So he just imposed his will on them. Pretty arbitrary authority. Pharaoh was unmoved by their screaming, and he rejects their appeal for mercy. The overseers have one final option. They walk out of the palace, and guess who they bump into? Moses and Aaron. They were probably out there waiting on them. What happened in there? What did they say to Moses and Aaron? The Hebrew word translated met. Look in verse, let me find the verse. I think it's verse 10. No, it's verse 20? 20, yeah. The foreman of the people of Israel saw that they were in trouble when they said, you shall by no means reduce your number of bricks to your daily task. They met Moses and Aaron when they were waiting for them, who were waiting for them. As they came out from Pharaoh, they said to them, now look at the word, the second word in that verse 20. They met. That word right there has a dual meaning. There were some taskmasters who were going, ooh, you're taking the fire out of me. Others of them raised their fists and said, you know what, you guys caused all this trouble. You're going to get beat too. So there's a combination, kind of a mixed crowd of people walking out of the palace. going, you know what? You caused this problem. I hate you, and you caused this problem. I'm going to let you have a few lumps on your skull too. This is a really mixed crowd of people who are battling with Moses and Aaron. So Moses and Aaron are like trapped. We just did what God told us to do. You gotta thump us. You see what's going on in the story right here? There's a little more behind the text than what comes through the English translation. They say, you have made us stink in the eyes, the sight of Pharaoh and his servants, and have put a sword in his hand to kill us. Moses and Aaron do not respond. Is God responsible for the events? We talked about that. I didn't click through here. Moses was challenged, and this is where we are right now. He's very challenged with the given situation. He's not a person who's been in a position of authority for 40 years. He's been running some sheep around the desert. All of a sudden, he's God's spokesman on earth. That's a pretty serious elevation of authority. God says to Moses in chapter 5, verse 22 and 23, let's go down there, verse 22, and Moses turned to the Lord and said, O Lord, why have you done evil to this people? Why did you ever send me? For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to this people, and you have not delivered your people at all. The Hebrew text indicates that Moses is as unhappy with God as the overseers were with Moses and Aaron. It doesn't really come through the English translation. They're really unhappy. That's why he says, one translator translates, why in the world did you ever pick me? That's what he actually translates the Hebrew word to. Why in the world did you ever pick me? I don't like this assignment. I don't like being in the middle of this mess. You caused this problem. I want out. That's what he's really saying. You see what's going on? There's lots of tension in this particular story right here. Now let's go to verse 2 through 8. All right? God's authority is restated. Let's listen to what God has to say to Moses. Verse 2. God spoke to Moses and said to him. Now picture, everybody in the story so far is just frustrated beyond belief, and God's just perfectly calm. He says, let me remind you who's running the show. I am the Lord. That's Yahweh. I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob as God Almighty, El Shaddai. That's the Hebrew text word. But by my name, the Lord, Yahweh, I did not make myself known to them. I also established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, the land in which they lived as sojourners. Moreover, I have heard the groaning of the people of Israel, whom the Egyptians hold as slaves, and I have remembered my covenant. Say therefore to the people of Israel, I am the Lord. Just repeat my name, Yahweh. I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians, and I will deliver you from slavery to them, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great acts of judgment. I will take you to be my people. I will be your God, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God, who has brought you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. I will bring you into the land that I swore to give Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I will give it to you for a possession. Yahweh. He says it one more time. 4 times in that text right there, he says, just say my name. They'll know exactly what that means. I had a friend in Alaska in a passion group, and when he prayed sometimes, he just repeated the name Jesus over and over. Plain. I'm reminding myself who's running the show. Okay. I'm just reminding myself who's running the show in my life. This is I call it the Jesus prayer. In those important verses, God states absolute truth for Israel's ears and also for us. There are 3 important things in that text for you to see It's not on your notes, but here it is. First, that the authority that God had with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob was real. Let me ask you a question. Anybody ever make you a promise? And then they didn't keep it? Yeah, that's happened to me. What does that do to their authority in your life? I don't trust your words. God says to Moses, I have made a promise to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And this is where I discovered the meaning of faith. Faith is simply believing that God will keep his promise. Moses doesn't know that yet. He's heard about it, but he hasn't experienced it yet. It helps you experience it, doesn't it? Does God keep his promises? Does a person who's in authority have the ability to make promises and keep promises? I know plenty of people in authority who make promises, but they can't keep them all. Only one person keeps all of their promises. That's God. He's reminding Moses of that, Moses of that in this particular text. He had the authority to promise those things because God has the authority to bring those things to pass. This goes to the heart of what we believe about God. Secondly, verse 7 is a strong statement of God's power to choose and elect his own people. I will make you be my people. I will be your God, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God, who has brought you out of the land, out of the burden, from the burdens of the Egyptians. God has the authority to choose his own. God has the authority to bless his own. God has the authority to rescue his own. And I see that promise as a corporate promise. These are my people, and I am going to rescue these people to live in the land that I have promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Are you questioning my promise or my authority? He concludes with this in the second part with the very same words that he started with. I am the Lord. Let's just touch on this idea for a moment on the power of God. I've thought about this so many times in my life. What is the source of God's power? God's holy, therefore he has all the authority, which means that he has all the power. There's plenty of people who flex power, but they really don't have the authority that goes with that. They actually step over the bounds of their authority. And the reason why they do that is because they don't live a holy life. Nothing holy inside them. We always want more power than we actually deserve. God has, he's pure holiness, therefore he has all the authority, and therefore he has all the power to do whatever he says he's going to do. Connect those three words, holiness, authority, and power, and you will understand the Old Testament and God's ways. All other powers are corrupted by sin, and therefore wield power poorly. How is God's power manifested? In our text, it is manifested through his words. What did God say in Genesis 1, verse 3? And God said, let there be light. He wielded his power by speaking. And he says in the text right here, God speaks. There are no other gods who speak. None. They're all completely mute, silent. The gods of humankind are all speechless. They have nothing to say because they have no power. It's partially wrapped up in a Hebrew word that comes first in verse 2. God's power is displayed in his speaking, unlike all other gods. God speaks, and this is an indication that God's true. It follows that he has unlimited power. One commentator writes, this is the awful majesty of God. When God speaks, when God calls Moses to Mount Sinai, he speaks, and Moses is like, whoa, this is not good. He spoke out of the burning bush. This is not good. He trembled at the voice of God. Because when a God speaks in the hearing of all silent gods, all the silent gods, there is something to truly be fearful of. The Egyptians, including Pharaoh, lived in a country where not a single god ever spoke a single word. Why? Because they weren't gods. God speaks. If you think about it deeply, we shouldn't be in this auditorium. We shouldn't carry a Bible in our pocket if God never spoke. He speaks. He carried along the authors of the Bible and planted his words in a book so that we could read them every day. Look what it says in verses 6 and 7. I am the Lord. I will bring you out. I will deliver you. I will redeem you. I will take you. I will be your God. You shall know. That's God speaking. God has the power to do all of that and more. That language, that promise is couched in the promise of the covenant that God made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Here's a very important precept. Yahweh is God because he makes promises that are kept. He spoke those promises and he keeps those promises. Perhaps someday this week, my mother-in-law will go see Jesus. In some regards, she might be on her deathbed. How do I know that that's true? Because God said it was true. He promised that. The death of his saints is his great joy. To be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. I know because God promised that. He said those words. I rest all of my hope and faith on what God has said. It's a simple promise. I either believe that or I don't. God has that authority and nothing can or will stand in his way. God can make promises, and God can see to it that those promises are kept. God does not make promises he does not intend to keep. There's something else here. Yahweh makes a statement based on the past. Covenant promises, verse 2 through 4. Look at 2 through 4 of chapter 6. God spoke to Moses and said to him, I am the Lord. I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob as Almighty God. But my name, by my name, the Lord, I will not make myself known to them. I also established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, the land in which they have lived as sojourners. So he reaches into the past, and he reminds Moses, this is what I told your forebears, and at this present moment, this is what I'm going to do. He says in verse 5. Moreover, I have heard the groaning of the people of Israel, whom the Egyptians hold as slaves, and I have remembered my covenant. Say, therefore, to the people of Israel, I am the Lord, and I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians, and I will deliver you from slavery to them, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great acts of judgment. He pictures a very bright future for his people. Let me take a principle out of that thing. Living in the past is just hard. I've met people who do that. Their life is about their past. They live it. But as a child of God, that's not a pattern that I should keep playing out in my life. I should learn from my past. I should deal with my past. I should forgive things that happened in the past. I should move on from the blessings of the past. And I should use whatever I've learned in the moment to bless the future. What's coming is far greater than anything going on right now. So I have a loose grip on my past. I don't to make decisions right now so that the future is blessed. That's important to remember. There's a conflict in the story that I want you to see. The first cause of all this conflict is between God, the God of Israel, and the God of Pharaoh, Satan. It's really interesting. In the Garden of Eden, the harmony of God's creation was disturbed by the entrance of Satan. From that story to the one that's before us, he has been behind every conflict that has ever taken place. He hates godly peace and obedience. He longs for strife and disregard for authority. It may appear that there's a conflict between Pharaoh and Moses, between the taskmasters and the overseers, between the overseers and Moses. There's not. That's all superficial. That's all up here. Below all that stuff is a conflict between the God of Moses and the God of Pharaoh. God himself and Satan. In the story, God has all the authority, and Satan wants authority. He said to God in Ezekiel, I think it's chapter 14, I will. God said, get out of my kingdom. Get out of here. He threw him on the earth. Cast him onto the earth. He's been down here stirring the pot ever since. Ever since. And Moses is simply the instrument of God, which qualifies you for authority. When you just hear what God says and just do it. Does that mean anything's going to turn out wrong? Not necessarily. In the end, the absolute authority in the universe will win, and all other authority will submit. Let me just jump to an aside right here just for a moment. How do you confront people in authority who are abusing their authority? 3 times in the story, a person under authority confronts a person in authority. Moses confronts Pharaoh in 5 verse 1 with these words, thus says the Lord. The overseers confront Pharaoh with the words, why do you treat your servants like this? And Moses confronts God with the words, O Lord, why have you done evil to this people? Why did you ever send me? Here's the question. Does it matter how I confront people who are in authority? In the story of Moses, in Numbers chapter 12 and Numbers chapter 16, people in Moses' life confront his authority. His sister and brother, in Numbers 12, and Korah, Dathan, and Abiram in Numbers 16. What happened? Nobody profited except Moses. And his response to them was amazing. We'll touch on that some other time in the future. But how we confront people in authority absolutely matters. You just can't blow off steam and say whatever you want to say. People in authority are put there by God. That's what I learned from Romans chapter 13, verse 1. God put everybody in authority on purpose in that position, even Pharaoh. So how we confront authority matters. A proper response to all of that is to trust God. So let's draw some conclusions. I've got 5 of them on my list right here. You can find other ones in here as well. But first of all, in chapter 5, verse 22 through chapter 6, verse 1, like Moses, I too struggle with God's strategies. In this story right here, there's a strategy, right? You're thinking to yourself, you know, if God wanted the people of Israel to have a land of Canaan, why did he have to do this whole bunch of nonsense? Send them off to Egypt, and the whole Joseph story, and then this rise of the nation of Israel, turn them into slaves, and then Moses, and go to the wilderness for 40 years and come back, and then take them out of there with 10 plagues, and go to the mountain of God. What's with all that nonsense? Just leave them in the land of Canaan where they were. I'm thinking, this is a pretty complex strategy. Why? This sounds like a government project. We just wind our way around all this nonsense to get to our intended goal. God has a purpose. Here's what I think. I like to be consulted about how things are going to play out. God is often silent in the struggle. Job would love to have been involved in the first 2 chapters of the story of Job, wouldn't he? Oh, I get it. I can handle this. No, God didn't. He never told Job what the strategy was. He doesn't tell Moses.
So what's my response? Just trust me. Just trust me. I think it was in, They Call Me Coach, the story of John Wooden, his first national championship. I think it was Sidney Wicks, came out of the game before they won. He sat down next to John Wooden, he goes, you know what, Coach? I think I trust you. I trust your strategies and all the stuff that you're doing. This is amazing. Let's turn out. They should have won the national championship. I just trust you. Oh, well, it's about time, buddy. That's what God thinks. You trust me now? Oh, it's about time. Just great for you to say such words. Just trust God. In the midst of all that stuff. To rest securely in His perfect care and trust, and He has my best interest at heart. One commentator writes, God's timing only sometimes coincides with my expectations, and His idea of the hardship we need to go through only sometimes coincides with our idea of how much we can take. We think, I can't deal with this anymore. I'm taking 400 years of slavery? That's a pretty messed up strategy. And not until they have to get their own straw did people start flaring up. Wow, what a strategy. Secondly, does obeying God sometimes result in trouble that God ordains? Genesis 15, verses 13 through 16 reads, Then the Lord said to Abram, know for certain that your offspring will be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and will be servants there, and they will be afflicted for 400 years. You're kidding me. Don't worry, you're not going to be involved in that. That's all God told Abraham. What if God said those words to you? Don't concern yourself with it. For 400 years, your offspring will be battling as slaves in a foreign country. What a miserable future. He's not done yet. But I will bring judgment on that nation that they serve, and afterward they shall come out with great possessions. As for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried in good old age. He lived another 60 plus years after God told him this. Died at 175. And they shall come back here in the fourth generation, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. So God's strategy is way more broad than just the focus of the people right here. He's got the Amorites in there and Egyptians and all that nonsense. Strategies are really complicated. He knows exactly what he's doing. God has all sorts of immediate purposes, and He also has long-range eternal design. Therefore, there's no reason to fear. I would grind my teeth. If I just knew what's going on, I would be okay. God, that's not the problem. That's not the problem. You just need to trust me. I like this part of the story. As much as I push against it, I'm happy to know it. Third, God is less concerned about my comfort. 400 years? You're kidding me. That's insanity. Slave, household service, not getting paid. Just doing exactly what you're being told. 400 years of it. He wants me to know Him. He says over and over in the text, I am Jehovah. I am Jehovah. I am Jehovah. Don't you realize that I'm running the show? I am Jehovah. You need your thick skull, Mark. I'm running the show. To know that He is there, ever present, and that nothing will happen without His permission. God's in control. I know that's true. Oh, it's so hard to live with. The fourth one, in Exodus 5, 1 through 14, Yahweh and Pharaoh are set in opposition to one another, every person either serves God as his slave or Satan as his slave. You get the distinct impression from the story that there's not a third option. There's not like my evil aunt or some corrupt idea run by the communists. There's only two. There's either listening to obey God or the opposer to God, Satan. There's nothing in between. Matthew 6:24, you can either serve God or mammon. Jesus said those words. How about Paul in Romans chapter 6? Do you not know that if you present yourselves to anyone as obedient slaves, you are slaves of the one whom you obey, either of sin which leads to death, or of obedience which leads to righteousness? But thanks be to God that you who were once slaves of sin, that's the dominion of Satan, have become obedient from the heart to the standard of teaching to which you were committed, and having been set free from sin, you are now the slaves of righteousness. You follow God. So guess what? We all get to be slaves. We either are slaves to sin and evil, or righteousness and justice. At the heart of the Exodus story, writes one commentator, is the issue of who will serve or worship whom. Pharaoh says, I don't know who this Yahweh character is. Go back and make bricks without me providing straw. The final one, Exodus 6:2-8 is what Jesus does for us at the cross and announces the good news. Let me read this to you. We'll close in prayer. God said to his people, I will bring you out from under the yoke of the Egyptians. Begin to picture in your mind the spiritual dynamic that's going on in the story. This is a picture. This is the most important picture, real picture of what's coming in our lives. I've never been anybody's slave. Well, sometimes my parents. I've never been a slave, lashed and so forth. But we're all slaves of sin. I will bring you out from under the yoke of the Egyptians. I will free you from being slaves to them. I will redeem you with an outstretched arm, with mighty acts of judgment. I will take you as my people. I will be your God. I will bring you to the land that I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and I will give it to you as a possession. Here's what the New Testament translates all of that action into for us as believers. As a child of God, I have been brought out from the bondage of Satan and sin. I have been freed from slavery to Satan and sin. I have been redeemed by God's powerful arm and his mighty act of redemption at the cross of Christ. I have been taken in as one of God's children. I now have Yahweh as my God. I will one day be welcomed into the promised land, the New Jerusalem, and it will be my possession forever as God's child. As everything that happened to Israel was all God's doing, so everything that will ever happen to me at the end of this age is all God's doing. Moses was challenged. But oh, when God spoke, everything started to align itself. He doesn't fight with God anymore. There are some serious problems. Moses doesn't fight with God anymore. He doesn't push back again. Get me out of this job. He just walks in there and says what God knows what he says. Goes out, turns out blood. Let's pray. Father, thank you for reminding us that you really are sovereign. You really do run the world. You have a strategy to bring all of your people to that holy city called New Jerusalem one day, and sin will be eradicated, the devil will be burning in hell, and all the people who listen to him were slaves to sin. I pray, Lord, that not a single person here falls in that category. If there is, today will be a day of salvation. They will repent and turn to Jesus and become a slave to righteousness. Thank you for reminding us in this story that speaks into our spiritual lives. Use it for your glory, Lord, we pray in Christ's name.